Hello everyone. Now I looked at some of my commentaries as of late and I realized I've only been doing commentaries on a bunch of work in progress upcoming stuff. And I haven't really touched upon the base ships in a while. And in fact, I haven't touched upon the Hindenburg in almost a year. So I figured, why not feature pretty much one of my favorite cruisers in the game for a commentary for a change. So instead of needing to put up work in progress slabs and explain when and how it's coming, I can just show you a ship that is actually in the game. Now, the Hindenburg is subject to some changes though, like they're gonna nerf the reload by a second. I don't feel like it's gonna change the gameplay of the ship at all, it's just gonna make it less effective at its preferred gameplay. Which is kind of okay, because the ship does kind of border on being a bit stupid. Now, we're facing a lot of tier 10s. I am in a division though. I'm in a division with Isolate in a Yamato and Flambas in a Gearing. And because of course Flambas is pushing B aggressively, I'll sail as close as I can to the B capture point to support him. In fact, if you look at my concealment, you note that my concealment is right at the edge of B. So as soon as I get spotted, I know that someone is already entering B, which of course gives my destroyer, Flambas, advanced warning that there's a destroyer coming in, since I told him instantly as I was spotted, so even before the DD entered the cap, he knew there was a DD contesting, which makes it easier to dodge potential early incoming torpedoes. A Benson has left the smoke, so I angle into the smoke and park here, so that I can use the smoke to my advantage. I pop spotter plane to be able to reach the Bismarck, since I prefer the reload mod, and meanwhile the DD in the cap has been spotted by Flambas, and I start supporting him with some additional firepower. It is a Kagero though, which means of course he already gearing versus Kagero is a significant advantage. This Kagero is also sailing very questionably into the island, and with the combined firepower he does go down very early. And Akizuki gets spotted as well as a lot of incoming torpedoes from B, which I will need to keep an eye out. You note that the smoke is about to fade, so I need to get ready to accelerate, which happens to coincide pretty well with these torpedoes coming in, since I will need to dodge them. A Mogami was briefly spotted trying to enter the cap though, so I switch to AP and I hold my position. I want to accelerate away from these torpedoes, but I also want to support my destroyer, because that Mogami looks like he's rushing him, and he will need help with a Mogami. Especially since he's not bailing, he's staying in the cap, which is a bit questionable and very risky, because if that Mogami gets lucky, he might eat a lot of damage. Mogami does get spotted. Note that you aim a bit lower than you normally do when you're using a spotter plane, because you have a different point of view, a different angle you're firing from. I only get one pen, and Flambas actually gets detonated. So the Mogami got a lot luckier than we predicted. He got the detonation. I do get revenge though, triple citadel on the Mogami, and that is of course the power of this German AP. You can punish those kinds of broadsides very heavily, and you will see it multiple times in this commentary. I'm caught a bit in the open. B is being contested. I have Hydro ready though, but there's a Neptune smoke in front of me, and I'm gonna see if I can leech the next smoke. It's pretty safe to park in these smokes, even in games with this many destroyers, if you are running the Hydro. If you don't have Hydro, you need to be a bit more safer with how much you use the smokes, but as long as you have it, you see how early these torps are being spotted and how easy it is to avoid any sort of devastating volleys coming your way. We are in a bit of a problem here though. We have a bit of a problem because, well, they got so lucky to get that detonation on our destroyer. It means that they managed to secure B, which means of course they get central control. And central control is very important in World of Warships. People often don't understand how important it is, because if they get battleships that utilize that central control, they are basically able to shoot the broadsides on both flanks. There's risk of being crossfired, but if there's island cover, like there is on this map, it's quite easy to just cover one side with an island and just shoot at the other side. Regardless though, I cannot remain here for long. As you see, my Hydro has run out, and with all these destroyers we constantly see these torp volleys coming our way. I don't consider this as safe of a position anymore, and I start moving forward and seeing if I can maybe reposition a bit. At the very least, I'm putting the Yamato between me and potentially incoming torpedoes, so that if they do launch a volley from B, well, there's the Yamato massive torpedo belt to protect me. Speak of the devil, I slow down to dodge them. Still got 10 seconds left of this smoke. Note that when you're about to leave a smoke, you want to stop shooting a couple of seconds before you leave it, because the bloom effect, it doesn't occur exactly when you shoot. It actually lingers for a few seconds. So if you have, for example, 2 seconds left on a smoke, and you shoot and then leave the smoke, you will actually get spotted because the bloom effect lingers. So that's something to keep in mind. If there's a few seconds left on the smoke, don't shoot. Just play it safe, stay undetected. And I'm playing a bit risky here because I saw the Amagi and Montana on the other side of the map. So I'm charging this St. Louis, who is farming my Yamato, to see if I can maybe punish him. The reason why this is a risky move is because I can't angle to the left, because there's an island on my left. So that means if there were, for example, a Montana instead of a Bismarck down south, I could get punished very hard here. In this case though, I'm taking the risk that it's only a Bismarck, and it's unlikely he will get that big of a hit on me, and he does not get that big of a hit on me. At this point I'm able to angle away, and now the St. Louis is in huge trouble because he can try to rush me, which is going to be rough into my torpedoes and my full broadside firepower, or he can try to turn out, which he tries to, but against Hindenburg AP, I did mention full broadsides, Hindenburg AP is extremely punishing. So my aggressive move on that guy actually works out really well, and I managed to secure us a second cruiser kill, and also of course it helps retain the sea control. That cruiser was obviously overextended, but getting rid of him as quickly allows me to reposition to the other part of the map. Worth noting, a cyclone is about to kick in. It has however not kicked in yet, and this is where we need to pay attention to my concealment. I just got detected. The only place I could get detected from is in front of me, so I instantly react by popping hydroacoustic surge because I know there's a destroyer here, and I start pinging that area right in front of me to let my team know as well there is a DD right in front of me. My team needs to know. Hydro picks up torpedoes from the left, but that's not what I'm looking for. Whoever launched those torps would not have spotted me. There is something right in front of me. I slow down to dodge these torps, and of course to farm this Hindenburg to make sure we get the kill as well here. But what I'm looking for is the target right in front of me. Hindenburg does go down, and now we accelerate to full speed since there's no risk of our broadside being caught, and we want to see if we can catch this destroyer, because I think he's caught between all of us right in the middle, and I need to work fast if I want to catch him. And it does work out well. My hydro catches the gearing. I might have been able to dodge these torps if I cared enough to actually dodge all of them, but I'm willing to eat a torpedo on the nose, only 10k damage, just to make sure I can hunt this guy down. Note that I'm not trying to turn full broadside to bring all my guns to bear. And that's because I don't want this guy to be able to get away. If he gets undetected, he'll be able to outrun to the north, and he's going to be a huge thorn for my team. So instead, I just charge in, full nose in, full speed, and try to keep him within my hydro, so he has no chance of disengaging. And this is very important for the team to get rid of this guy, because a DD in our backline could be a nightmare. When my turrets have finally turned, I turn and give a full broadside, then bring all my guns to bear, and we do finish him off. It's important when you chase a DD like that you don't start shifting course, attempting to get all your guns to bear, because the Hindenburg is actually a very slow cruiser. It's one of the slowest tier 10 cruisers, and gearing like does what, almost 40 knots. With the speed flag, it's even compared to other DDs, what, 37 knots? It doesn't matter. It's still significantly faster than you, and if the destroyer just sails in a straight line and you start wiggling trying to bring all your guns to bear, you're gonna get 1 or 2 volleys off, and he's gonna leave your hydro range and he's gonna be undetected. And I was not willing to allow that to happen, so I just sailed in a straight line just to keep him as a target as long as possible. The Cyclone has kicked in at this point, and Isolate, my Yamato division body, has also died, so it's kind of up to me to uphold this division at this point. Akaba is pushing B, and he's chasing our Sasho inside B, so obviously once again, note that I'm not changing really course, I'm sailing in a straight line to try to gain and hold as much speed as possible. I'm hoping that we will be able to catch this guy, but it looks like he's leaving the camp down south, which means, honestly, Hindenburg, as I mentioned, I'm struggling to break 30 knots. Akaba can do, what, 45 knots? You shouldn't waste time chasing other ships in the Hindenburg. The second you find yourself trying to hunt down other ships that are faster than you, you're most likely misplaying. So at this point, the Kaba looks like he is completely leaving my range. Yeah, he leaves the cap, he's just going to chase the destroyer. No point going here. The Neptune and Minotaur are already going for him. So instead, we're going to see if we can help out at the sea capture point. Also worth noting, there was an option there where I could have chosen to go to A or chosen to go to C. At A, they have a Montana and an Amagi. So had I chosen to go to A, I would have been forced to fight double battleships. One battleship the Hindenburg does well against, double, not so much. It's also quite important that I haven't been detected in a long time, so at this point I'm a ghost. The enemy has no knowledge of my map movement. So I choose my target, kind of like a shark hunting for the optimal target. I choose the Minotaur, because I know where the Minotaur is, because the cap is being contested, and then Benson has briefly spotted him, and I am undetected. So I should be able to catch a Minotaur completely off guard. The Benson moves in to spot him, which is optimal timing for me. I angle my guns, I'm closing the distance as fast as I can, and of course this German AP against broadside Minotaur is very disgusting, but I do want to delete him instantly. I don't want to give him any chance, and as soon as he renders, I turn full broadside, shoot AP, he doesn't react in time, and another Citadel volley on the cruiser, and we do manage to secure our Kraken. It also keeps, of course, our Benson alive. Now, last spotted enemy players were down south, so I instantly turned down south to try to angle towards them. It's a Shima and a Bismarck, but I do have my Hydra ready, so if the Shima does show up, I should be quite safe. What does show up is the Bismarck. I had HE loaded in case it was a Shimakaze I ran into. AP would have been better against a broadside battleship, and thus I instantly shift to AP. He does angle just enough to bounce my a German AP. It doesn't have the American angles, and he's rushing me. He doesn't really have any good choices though. In this situation, this is heavily in the favor of the Hindenburg, because if he tries to rush me, I can torp him. Note I only launched one volley of torps. You never panic launch all of them, you save your volleys. I shoot high on the belt when he's turning to hit his superstructure, and once he's fully turned, I aim for the upper part of his belt to get those juicy full penetrations, and the German AP just pretty much melts him in seconds. And I focus down the spotter plane. In case you were wondering why I turned my camera to the left there, I wanted to focus down the spotter plane, because once again, in Cyclones you want to be undetected as much as possible to catch the enemy by surprise. Worth noting, if you're going to brawl someone, don't panic launch all your torpedoes. The second you have launched all your torpedoes, all your threat is gone. He no longer has to avoid your torps, and he can play quite differently than if he's worried about potential torpedoes. So sometimes the threat of your torpedoes is more valuable than the torpedoes themselves. Now at this point the game does kind of not really become that interesting anymore. The Shimakaze, the Montana gets killed and the Shimakaze just runs away, so rather than drag on and watching as we're trying to chase them down as they flee, I might as well call the game here, since we did manage to secure a victory in this game. And what's important here is, of course, I'm doing the mission, the Admiral Halsey mission, and you need to farm credits to complete the mission. So I'm running 2 credit flags, and combined with the premium camo, I actually managed to break 1 million credits, which is pretty satisfying considering this is a silver ship, and silver ships generally don't generate as much credits as premium ships do. One devastating strike and a Kraken, sadly no high caliber or Confederate, but then again this was a bit of a atypical game with the Cyclone and sneaking up and deleting cruisers left and right. It did show off, of course, the strengths of the Hindenburg. And what I considered especially important in this game, in fact, if we look at the detailed report, the team score, 2.7k, always nice. What I considered especially important is that much of the gameplay that you saw in this commentary will be perfectly possible once the nerf hits. Because most of the time, pretty much all my deletion kills were me catching the cruisers full broadside and blapping them with AP. And that's not going to change. The alpha is still going to be there. The huge damage your broadside does is still going to be there. It's going to be a 1-second reload nerf, but really, it's not the end of the world. What's going to be most affected by that is long-range HE spam. because you rely solely on DPM when it comes to long range HE spam. DPM stands for damage per minute, aka how much damage you can pump out steadily, and of course a reload nerf will greatly impact that kind of gameplay. But if you like sneaking around using that AP and blapping broadsides, the actual impact of the reload nerf will not be nearly as severe, and I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal at all. Detailed report, finally, I mentioned it a couple of times, almost 100k damage just with AP, HE damage 37k, and a bit of fires. Honestly, I wasn't going for the HE spam this game. This was a brawling cyclone game, which of course fits the Hindenburg extremely well, and it did allow me to carry this game to a victory. Anyway, let me show you guys my recommended build for this ship, since it tends to vary quite a bit, since the Hindenburg is a very flexible ship. As usual, I will start with the modules. Now, consumable wise, premium repair and premium heal are the two priorities, and then depending on what you can afford, premium hydro followed by premium spotter plane. I do prefer the spotter plane in this build, as you're quite limited on range, as I do prefer to use the reload module. Hydro or defensive AA depends on what kind of division you're playing with, and of course it depends on what kind of matchmaking you're facing. Facing a lot of carriers, get defensive AA. Not facing a lot of carriers, like seems to be kinda the meta as of the past few months, then hydro is perfectly fine. Upgrade wise, spotting aircraft mod 1, which increases the duration of the spotting aircraft, as it is an integral part of our build, since it gives us the range we otherwise lack. Hydro duration, once again, this is provided that you do slot the hydro consumable. If you don't, then obviously this is useless. It can alternatively be replaced by steering gears or the defensive AA mod if you choose to slot defensive AA. Better dispersion on the main guns. I'm actually a bit surprised I have this. I think this might be because it's clan war build. For random battles though, AA guns are significantly better, because the bonus you get from aiming systems mod 1 is pretty pitiful for cruisers. So here I just realized I've been running the wrong build. I would highly recommend running AA guns mod instead. I guess this was just clan war build. Honestly, I'll leave it for now in case I end up playing this in scrims or something. Faster rudder shift, concealment, and of course faster gun reload. We don't need the range because we can get the range with the spotter plane. This is random battle setup though. What an interesting build I've been running. I'm not sure I entirely agree with the build that I've been running, but then again, that is kind of the whole point with the Hindenburg. It allows for a lot of build flexibility. In fact, if we look at my build that I'm running right here, we have priority target. I'm going through these in order of importance. You go for priority target, adrenaline rush, superintendent, and concealment expert. This is pretty much the 10 points I would say that you cannot in any way change. If you're gonna build a Hindenburg captain, this is the base upon that you build your captain. After this, at 14 points, I highly recommend fire prevention, because your biggest counters are things like Zhao, other Hindenburgs HE spamming you, Henry IV sailing away HE spamming you, and so forth. And reducing their fire damage is very, very valuable. So I would say for 4 points, at 14 points, fire prevention is a pretty straightforward perk as well. Now we got 5 points left, and how you spend them, there's a lot of flexibility here. I would recommend expert loader, because being able to load that powerful AP when you need it is so very, very powerful. But then we still have 4 points, and there's a lot of options here. You can go for this build, which gives you another spotter plane in case one is shot down, and of course additional spotting around you, because you see more around the islands, you see more DDs, you see more torps, and basics of survivability to reduce fire damage. Alternatively, if you slot defensive AA instead of hydroacoustic search, then instead of going for these two perks, you might instead spec into AFT to better defend yourself against incoming aircraft. Or you might spec into the double fighter plane and vigilance, because if you're not slotting hydro, then you're of course more vulnerable to torpedoes, and having vigilance to warn you of incoming torpedoes is also a very valid option. So Besides, I would say the 14 points that go into concealment expert and fire prevention, the rest of the points are quite flexible. Now, of course, there's some very debate. Of course, there's some straight up stupid abilities, but in general, there's a lot of flexibility between AFT, vigilance, and basics of survivability. You don't need expert marksman, by the way. I see some people spec it, and I don't think it's worth it because your turret traverse is 25.9, and I think this only shaves off like 3 seconds or something. So this is a waste of points. Things like last stand also a waste of points. So I've given you a lot of suggestions here how you choose to build your captain. You can build it exactly like mine, that's perfectly fine, or you can do some modifications, like if you're worried about torpedoes, you can go for vigilance. If you queue up with a carrier body, you go for AFT and so forth. Ultimately though, I leave those choices up to you. Flag wise, signals, the fire chances are pretty straightforward, not that important on the Hinden, but it does give you a bit more HE potential. Healing is probably the most important. Speed is pretty damn useful. Faster consumable usage, pretty damn useful. Ultimately though, I have both the credit flags since I'm grinding the credit missions to get Commander Halsey, but which flags you choose is kind of up to you. The only really must-have I would say is the healing flag, since you're kind of a tanky cruiser to begin with. Boosting that tanky potential is absolutely worth it. Worth noting is that I do have the premium camo on the Hindenburg, and that's because it's one of my favorite cruisers. As you can see, I have 2 million XP in this ship, so I've been playing this for a long time, and this has been a very good investment. If you choose to buy it or not, that's up to you. You have to decide if you do want to play the ship as much as I've been playing it. Sometimes people will buy a premium camo and then they end up not actually enjoying the ship that much, so I recommend getting a good chunk of games under your belt before you buy it. Anyway, that was my Hindenburg commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.